Just about to bring up Travis. So what do you got?
Well, I was just going to say that he talked to him and his team before.
Right.
Is that what you're going to bring up?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. But basically, he went at length, and I don't know if this is a CYA deal. Cover your.
No, I read too that the chief had concerns and talked to the Travis
and he was
Scott
basically
people.
said, "Oh, we'll be fine. Everything's gonna be okay."
Well, I have two great follow-up letters to that. Joe, during Monday's discussion of Travis Scott, one of the crew compared Scott to the Cardi B phenomenon, which I believe is apt when viewed in the broader cultural context. When the Cardi B WAP phenomenon hit its zenith, you read an email on the show in which I compared WAP or WAP to a foul heavy metal band called the Mentors. The vulgarity of both outfits was identical. The difference is in reach. Whereas the Mentors had a small cult following that quickly died away, Cardi B was embraced by the larger culture, earned a Grammy, and made a fortune. As mentioned in my email, the song was gleefully sung by 10-year-olds to the delight of their enlightened parents and to the horror of wizened grandparents. Anyone who questioned this was labeled an out-of-touch fuddy-duddy. Similarly, when examining Travis Scott, you brought up the punk rock phenomenon. Anarchy, rage, and violence characterized punk rock shows, but their reach was minuscule during their short-lived heyday. The Sex Pistols didn't attract stadiums full of devotees. They had a cult following at best. Only decades later did everyone and their brother claim to be on board from the get-go. One might argue that the punk spirit lives on in bands like Green Day, but theirs is a slick commercial version that appeals to mom, dad, and kids alike. Their concerts are safe, and during the audience participation part of their shows, it's not uncommon for teens to be invited to the stage to jam with the band. The problem with Travis Scott that he's inciting tens of thousands of people to violence, and in many cases, they're complying. And oblivious to the irony, or perhaps capitalizing on it, Scott is encouraging an audience comprised largely of affluent whites to rage against the very system that ironically has enriched not just him, but them to a degree. I would characterize the whole rap music genre in this manner. When you watch this year's Super Bowl halftime show, Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg et al., remind yourself that their collective net worth is in the billions and they've achieved it propagating the violent lifestyle that is on full sickening display in big city headlines on a daily basis. I, for one, don't consider it gangsta to encourage anarchy from inside a gated enclave. During your discussion, you kept giving the disclaimer that you're an old white guy. Well, I'm an old white guy myself, and I'm neither afraid nor ashamed to identify Travis Scott's music as without merit and his stage antics as criminal. My hope is he faces multiple felony counts for what transpired, and he very well may. But the sad irony is that if he's prosecuted and imprisoned, that will only serve to increase his cred among his followers, and his fortune will be 100 times greater upon his release. Good luck, Tom from St. Paul.
Tommy
Very good
B.
points. Good points. The distinction between Cardi B and Travis Scott is that they have wide reach. Now, the Sex Pistols had 12 people show up in some room someplace.
And the other part you saw where this guy said, "Well, I'm offering to pay for the funeral expenses for all the."
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not good enough, pal.
But he becomes a martyr. That is so true.
It is.
Well, Scott Matura weighs in from Montana. Joe, I think I can provide some perspective to crowds, concert violence, and incitement that probably only Kenny can relate to. I am unfamiliar with the specifics of Travis Scott's music, but I have become familiar with his live concert history in the last few days. Be it the news or young people I know that are very familiar with his shows. Joe, I couldn't disagree more with John Haidt's case he made that rock bands have a history of inciting violence. Well, I defended myself. I don't think Haidt won that point.
You declared victory.
I put my foot down.
Right.
Again, from what I know of Kenny, he has experience, as do I, with concerts that can be violent. From punk shows to heavy metal shows, all through my adolescence and early 20s, I've been to probably 150 shows that had a level of physical violence. This is what was known as a mosh pit. Mosh pits are organized. There's a method to the madness, and more importantly, there are rules. There is a flow and pattern to the pushing and shoving. I have been to shows where two guys too big and intimidating for me to even look at are extremely rough for an hour and a half straight. Then at the conclusion of the show, they shake hands and give each other the head nod, and off they go peacefully. I personally have shoved someone so hard that they went to the ground, which is never the intent, and I immediately race to get them back on their feet, the cardinal rule of situations like this. And they in turn gave me the thanks, brah. I can tell you that I'd put any of the tough metal fans I've been associated with over the crowds that frequent a Travis Scott show, but they know the rules. Of all these shows, and as recently as the Reverend Horton Heat in Austin, Texas, about 7 years ago, violence is never incited or encouraged. It is not discouraged, but even the bands have rules. Countless shows I have witnessed a band stop, point out malfeasance or punks in the crowd, and tell them if they don't knock that off, they were done. I had a close contact with someone who lives in L.A. who was a sound engineer for decades, and credit to John, might be the only guy that has better music history knowledge than the newsman. We texted this on this news story, and he finds the comparison to Travis Scott's history of show violence with punk and hard rock incomparable and completely wrong. Travis Scott incites and encourages violence, intense violence. He not only encourages it, but he revels in its intensity, and he has the criminal record to prove it. Comparing Travis Scott to any rock and roll band that has had out-of-control crowds is ridiculous. Inciting pushback every day, Scott Matura and Bozeman, Montana. Good points too. Good points too. I think we've not heard the last of Travis Scott. I think there'll be an overwhelming number of lawsuits.
And there was a section of people that were being pointed out of being upset and commenting that they were very discouraged by the fact that he canceled this weekend's show in Las Vegas.
Right.
Folks, perspective.
There isn't any.